These view graphs show how we will fund the plan to rapidly implement UN SDG TAPs. This is TAP 31, which outlines funding, donation sources, and cost avoidance measures, and will also eliminate excessive inequalities, which is a SDG of the United Nations. In particular, these sources will provide upfront surge funding and donations to, in particular, get individuals self-sufficient as rapidly as possible. And it will also implement all the UN SDGs. Now, the upfront surge funding is tremendously important. It will cost way less than dragging it out because you'll get the people employed, making them self-sufficient, and then it will require no money. It'll take it for a little while as we get them completely self-sufficient. The other thing it'll do is rapidly get everyone in the world working together at decent work and living guaranteed wages and self-sufficient. By doing this, we'll also boost the economy right away by having people working and being able to buy things. Pay down the national debt and end sequestration austerity programs, and end recessions and economic collapses forever. Tax 32 is simplify and eliminate regressive taxation. Regressive taxation hurts the economy. If 90% of the people don't have money to buy food because they have to pay 10% sales tax on it, it hurts the economy. So the idea is to simplify all the tax codes, remove all the loopholes, and eliminate income, sales, state, corporate, and all of the taxes except for one. It'll be a very progressive property tax on the net assets of all individuals, corporations, and other entities with more than $1 million in net assets. So a small business that has less than $1 million in net assets will pay no taxes, and individuals with over $1 million in net, or less than $1 million in net assets will pay no taxes. And that's no matter where in the world the net assets are, including in overseas tax havens or people own property overseas. If citizens of the United States or people of the United States, they'll pay taxes on it. Now, if the country's charging taxes, that could be a deduction, but basically everything will pay. Now, the basic idea here is the rich are the only ones that can afford to pay taxes. The poor can't afford it, the middle class can't afford it. And they're paying the major part of them now. That's hurting the economy. It's hurting. Now, the corporations and businesses, and particularly individuals that have the money, can afford to pay it. An individual does not need $1 billion or $2 billion or 80 billion. If the richest man in this country has 80 billion, it is based absolutely on greed, and the psychologists now say self-doubt. And we can help these people by actually taxing them, and by the next step is to give them generous tax deductions based on the worthiness of their charitable cause that they're supporting. Now, I'm saying that if a generous rich person donates arable land that poor people can raise vegetables on, that's a very worthwhile charitable cause. And obviously this will reduce the cost of taxation by at least 90% collecting taxes, eliminate the need for at least 90% of the bookkeeping. Today, you have to have an EIN if you hire a nanny to take care of your kids. It will also eliminate all the unjust tax loopholes, because if the rich won't pay their taxes or don't, then the poor and the middle class have to pay them. And this idea of a sales tax, 98% of the people are paying the taxes. The 2% of the people uh, just don't buy that much stuff to make it possible to help the economy. Tap 22 is nationalize the Federal Reserve. And the first point I want to make is we need to do this very carefully and follow the last bullet. Avoid recessions and economic collapses. Be sure this is handled carefully. And now, the Federal Reserve Act was obtained by fraud. It's been used to commit fraud, and it is unconstitutional. The Constitution says that Congress, the government, shall coin the money and they'll appropriate all the money. So it is null and void. It needs to be vacated, and we need to nationalize the Federal Reserve. We need to work out a plan for the government to appropriate U.S. currency. Now, Abraham Lincoln did this after the end of the Civil War. It said in the Constitution. So instead of the Federal Reserve issuing it, the government needs to issue it. And we need to exchange Federal Reserve notes based on how they were earned, how they intend to be used with U.S. currency. We also need to recover, disgorge the Federal Reserve assets, which they have purchased with Federal Reserve dollars, which are U.S. dollars. So that actually belongs to the U.S. government. That again has to be carefully handled too. This is TAP 22, nationalizing large banks and their branches. Now, banks should be in the business of providing funds. They should not be in the business of something that people can get rich or that the bank can accumulate trillions of dollars. Now, the idea, we have the North Dakota Bank, which has done marvelous as a public bank. So we should need to do the same with the large banks, all of which will be insolvent once the Federal Reserve is nationalized. So we'll nationalize all the large banks and all their branches, and have to handle the private banks too, to be sure that the ones that are small banks that are providing a service, some way to keep them uh, working on this. And this is just a proposal. We have to work out the details. But we'll make the large banks and their branches into one national and state and city public banks. They'll make low or no interest loans directly into the economy, including to states, cities, worthwhile businesses, and institutions that generate jobs. We'll outlaw the trading of mortgages and derivatives and also excessive interest rates. For example, in 1980, the banks and the Federal Reserve bribed Congress into allowing any interest rate they want on mortgages. That's clearly unjust enrichment, and the bribes make it null and void. Same way with derivatives. In about 1999, there were about 6 different laws passed, Congress being bribed to pass them, to allow the trading of derivatives. They were outlawed by the Glass-Steagall Act years ago, since 1933. But the banks brought those back to make money. Now, the strange thing about this is these billionaires are taking these massive salaries and they're taking these massive loans from their own banks. They're getting stock dividends. They do not need these billions or even scores of millions of dollars. There needs to be a ceiling on how much they can make and how much they can own. This is one of the critical causes of poverty, and it's one of the first urgent things we need to address to get everybody to work, get everybody fully employed, having great lives, and we certainly can get rid of poverty. This is the age of plenty. With technology, it's really a crime for anybody to go to bed hungry. So thank you for listening to all this. I hope you'll provide feedback and help us implement this. The Beechers, who wrote the article saying we are living in an age of plenty, but we still have hunger, it's on peoplenow.org, said also we've lived with scarcity for so long, it's hard to understand abundance. But I believe that we can educate and train ourselves and we can do this. Thank you very much. Uh, there'll be other videos about null and void, different things coming out. It'll be in the information education program. Have a great day. Thank you.